See if you can just set your day to the side and trust that it will be there when you come back. And just take a moment to ask yourself, what does it look like for me to be here, present, for the next hour? And coming back to our breath one more time, take a deep breath in and let it out. Blink your eyes open. Now that we are thoroughly here together, I'd like to welcome you and explain what our evening's going to look like. My name is Tessa, and I'm on staff here at Church of the Advent. And our goal tonight is simple: to focus on being here together as we hold space to honor our experiences these past 2 years. Each one of you has a unique set of stories, your own layered experiences of pain, of loss, of grief, of joy. And yet we come together to grieve in community, and we want to acknowledge that. As Christians, we recognize and mourn that often we have not been able to provide people with templates to own and process pain. In an attempt to be joyful, we often jump prematurely to solutions. So tonight, we invite you to consider that Jesus is a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. Again and again, Jesus is found entering people's pain, seeing them, listening to them, and grieving with them. Through his own example of weeping at the tomb of his friend Lazarus, Jesus makes space for us to weep in the face of our pain and sorrow. He says another time, "Come to me, all you that are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." If we are to find healing, we must first walk into grief. To forgive, we must first know and validate the offense. The way out is always through. And as we do this, we believe God is present with us, waiting to receive our lament and crying with us. Now, you may be sitting there prickling with doubt or anger at the assertion that God is with you. Perhaps you are feeling a profound sense of his absence right now, or even starting to doubt his existence. Or maybe you were never convinced of it in the first place. To whatever extent you are able to enter this space, we welcome you to simply be exactly who and what you are. We have various invitations to participation and response, but you are obligated by nothing. All I ask is that you try to return to the present moment and stay in your body, and you can use the breathing exercises we just did. And I say this because grief often comes in giant waves that wash us away from the present, and it disconnects us from ourselves and from others. So since we only have about an hour or so tonight, I invite you to stay in manageable stories and memories to ease into moments of grief versus letting it wash over completely and sweep you away. Many of you have experienced compounded traumas these past 2 years. Many of you have experienced death and other extreme losses. Again, you won't be grieving much longer than this evening, so take your time. Perhaps instead of diving into the deep end, imagine wading in down the steps. Or you could grab a pool raft and simply float on top for a while. To help with this easing in and to provide a container, a pool for our tides of grief, shall we say, we will focus on 3 major emotions or movements during our time: anger, loss, and anxiety. If you open your program, you will see that soon we will begin with the experience of anger and how in the midst of our frustration and rage we long for justice. As you reflect on when you have felt angry during these past few years, let your mind and heart settle upon one scene, one situation, one interaction, maybe one hurt, and grieve there for a while. When we move on to loss and then to anxiety, you will do the same thing. Choose just one experience or feeling and sit in it. You will see prompts to walk you through reflecting there in your program. So as we progress through our 3 movements, you can also contemplate the art that will be on the screen or the emotions that are in the various poems that we have for you, or listen or even sing along to the music provided by the band. And you have a song sheet if you'd like to sing along. We have a few other activities for you, but they require some logistical explanation, so stay with me for a few more minutes. Everything is in your program, but I want to highlight a few things. At any point, you can come forward and kneel right here, and you will be prayed over silently by a few designated prayer ministers who will, in the silence of their hearts, hold you before God. You do not need to talk to them or say anything. You just get to be there, knowing you are not alone and that someone else is trying out words, even if you have none. There are also various art supplies in that corner back there, pastels, paper, charcoal, etc., that you're welcome to use to journal, draw, and express with. At any time, you can gather materials and take them back to your seat. In the back, we have a few people who would love to hear your stories. Sharing our experiences help us name the impact they've had on us, and to be seen in our sadness and hurt is something we all desperately need. So as you are reflecting and praying, if you simply want to go and share with someone, they will be there to listen quietly with empathy. They will not respond with anything other than the phrase, "Thank you for bringing me into your story and giving me the honor of being with you. I bless you as a person whose experiences are valid and who is worthy of love." To model this experience of integration through storytelling throughout this evening, we will also have 3 different people who will be telling a story from their past 2 years. So when the music quiets and they come up to the microphone, simply pause whatever it is you're doing and turn and look and give them the gift of hearing their grief. If you are kneeling here receiving prayer, you don't have to stay there as they're speaking. Feel free to just sit back in the pew and then come back after they're done. When they finish, you can just return to whatever it was you were doing. I will conclude this invitation with a prayer written by Cole Arthur Riley for her project Black Liturgies, and then I'll invite our first storyteller up. Let these words just wash over you as I read and pray. God of complicated hope, we confess that we have made for ourselves a dainty hope. It is difficult to accept the hope of inspirational quotes when we see the traumas of this world clear and constant. Many of us have had language of hoping in God wielded against us as a way to keep us from the lament and anger and justice we were meant for. Protect our hope from toxic positivity, that we could name truth of our deepest longings and face a waiting marked by pain and want. Help us to allow our dreaming to be a deep, guttural groan, a promise that we can recline into, a place where we can catch our breath. Amen. Now I invite Sarah forward to tell her story.
His name was not Roberto, but I'll call him that to protect his privacy. He was a man that I cared for during one of the COVID surges. When I was working half my time in my normal job as a nurse educator and the other half doing patient care shifts in the COVID ICU. Roberto, when I met him, he was laying in bed wearing a tank top and shorts, which stood out to me because he wasn't wearing a gown. So he looked mostly like a normal guy, but he was very, very sick on lots and lots of oxygen. And that day, I tried my hardest to keep him from needing to be intubated. I asked him only yes or no questions, because if he said anything more than that, he would start coughing so much that his oxygen levels would drop. And he had to lay on his stomach, because you get more air in your lungs when you're laying on your stomach than when you're laying on your back. So I would help him back onto his back or help him sit up for a few minutes at a time to drink a little water or have a bite of food, but he couldn't stay there long because his oxygen levels would drop again, and I'd have to help him back onto his stomach before they got too low. And I hoped against hope that with all of these precautions and everything we were doing, that he could maybe skate by without the breathing tube, but it didn't happen. 2 days later, he got intubated, and a month later, he died. And he was one of so many dead. It just felt like death was everywhere. I did everything I could to stop the death. And the virus was just stronger. It just kept coming. And after seeing so many people die, I started to wonder why we were even trying. It felt like nothing we were doing was making any difference. And I think there's a fine line between feeling frustration and anger, and feeling hopelessness and despair. And it would have been really easy to give up because it was such a helpless feeling. And now you are released to reflect and respond as we meditate on anger and the longing for justice. Thank you.
darkest night. You kindle the fire that never dies away, never dies away. Within our darkest night, you kindle the fire that never dies away, never dies away.
Four years ago, I left my life in Alabama behind, put my things in storage, and drove to Littleton, taking only what I could fit in my car. I was coming for a fresh start from a bad ending to be near my son and his family. When I arrived to stay with them while I got settled, my oldest granddaughter was so happy to have me here that she said, "There will never be a day like this again, Grammy." It was hard adjusting and living without my things, my own place, and my friends, but my family was such a joy and comfort to me. I finally decided I wanted to stay in Littleton and rented my own place about a half-mile from my son and his family in December of 2019. My job was improving, and I was enjoying having my own space and yet being so near my family. I recall telling my son during a walk I could almost dare to say I was happy again. And then 2020 happened. My world began to crumble. I lost one of my brothers, my mother, and my job. Everything was on Zoom, including church. My support and connection was my son and his family nearby. He then accepted a call to full-time ministry, and they moved to Fort Collins in August. I could no longer stop by for a meal or conversation or take my granddaughters to the park. My younger granddaughter was only 3 when they moved. Recently, I was reminiscing with the two of them about them living close to me and the time I lived with them. Annalise listened intently, and I asked her if she remembered when I lived in the house with them or when they could walk to my place. And she just looked at me and shook her head no. Those memories had faded because she was so young. I rejoice with my son and his family that he's doing what God has called him to do, and they are thriving. And I am so very pleased and blessed to see him serving God in this way. I'm glad they're close enough I can still drive to see them. It's a good thing. It's a very good thing. And yet to lose that closeness of them living nearby during a year of so many losses and so much isolation as a single person living alone during quarantines was a loss on top of so many losses. Good things can still be experienced as loss. And now you are released to reflect and respond as we meditate on loss and the longing for wholeness.
I'm reading for you something that my son Micah wrote. He was asked to share for this. He has a new job and he wasn't able to get off work tonight. So this is from Micah. I was this, and I will cry as his mom. I was 16 and in my sophomore year at a new high school when COVID began. I'm now 18 and I'm a senior. I was involved in many activities, volunteering at the Nature and Science Museum, acting in a community theater, historical reenacting, and I was looking forward to a summer job at Camp Itrahaji. I felt settled into my studies, enjoyed spending time with friends, cast, and other volunteers, and was excited about all that was yet to come. The day COVID restrictions went into place, I was in Tech Week preparing to perform for a play the next weekend. We packed costumes and props into a box and said, "See you in 2 weeks." The same thing happened at school and the places I volunteered. The 2 weeks came and went. During week 3, school began online, and the weeks continued to pass. Teachers and students either thrived or fell behind in the virtual classroom. I fell behind. I sat in a chair and rarely leaving it, constantly worried about my grades and feeling helpless and alone. I had been a straight A student, but I ended up failing one of my classes. I spiraled more and more into a pit of my own fear and anxiety. Even though I was with my family and occasionally hung out with a few quarantine friends, I felt utterly alone, especially when that friend group dissolved. There was always worry of what this or that will look like in the future. Will I spend the rest of school stuck online? What will become of my friendships? Will I have anyone left when this is over? As well as what's next that could go wrong. All I wish was that things would become similar to what they were before. And now you are released to reflect and respond as we meditate on anxiety and the longing for peace.
Trials, Lord, walk with me. In my trials, Lord, walk with me. When my heart is I'm troubled, Lord, walk with me. When I'm troubled, Lord, walk with me. When my head is bowed down in sorrow, Lord, I want Jesus to walk with me. I want Jesus to walk with me. I want Jesus to walk with me.
Matt is going to play one more song, and I invite you to finish whatever it is you're doing, finish telling your story, or come to a stopping point in your artwork, and eventually return to your seat. If you have created something that you would like to add to our collage, please do that now. Even if it's some journal pages you would be willing to give up, you can tear them up so we can't read what you're saying, but still put them up there.
Lord, from sorrows deep I call. When my hope is shaken, torn and ruined from the fall, hear my desperation. For so long I've pled and prayed, God, come to my rescue. Even so the thorn remains, still my heart will praise you.
Storms within my troubled soul, questions without answers. On my faith these billows roll. God be now my shelter. Why are you cast down, my soul? Hope in Him who saves you. When the fires have all grown cold, cause this heart to praise you.
My life be torn from me, every worldly pleasure, when all I possess is grief. God be then my treasure, be my vision in the night, be my hope and refuge, till my faith is turned to sight. Lord, my heart will praise you. Oh, my soul, put your hope in God, my help, my rock. I will praise Him. Sing, oh, sing through the raging storm. You're still my God, my salvation. Oh, my soul, put your hope in God, my help, my rock. I will praise Him. Sing, oh, sing through the raging storm. You're still my God, my salvation.
We will begin the process of climbing the ladder out of the pool. not because our grief is finished or our problem solved, but because we can rest for tonight. So let's end as we began by closing our eyes, placing our feet flat on the floor. Let your shoulders drop down away from your ears. Feel your body on the wooden pew. And take a deep breath in, filling up your lungs, and let it out slowly. Continue breathing deeply like this, in and out. One last time, in and out. And still with your eyes closed and breathing deeply, think back to these last 2 years and find yourself in a safe memory. Perhaps a person who has seen you, a relationship where you feel deeply loved. If you are experiencing Jesus as accessible right now, ask him, Jesus, where have you been close to me, looking on me with kindness and grieving with me? In the midst of all the grief and pain, who has brought you joy and let you rest with them? Can you see their face in front of yours and spend some moments looking into their eyes? Letting gratitude and closeness well up inside you. Sit in the feeling of knowing you are loved and that you are here.
From me, how long shall I seek counsel in my soul? Leave me so vexed in my heart. How long shall my enemy triumph over me? Consider and hear me, O Lord my God. Give light to my eyes that I sleep not in death. Lest my enemies say I have prevailed against him. For if I am cast down, those who trouble me will rejoice. But my trust is in your mercy, and my heart is joyful in your salvation. I will sing of the Lord, because he has dealt so lovingly with me. Indeed, I will praise the name of the Lord Most High.
On behalf of Church of the Advent, I want to thank you for entering in this space tonight. Thank you so much for those of you who shared and prayed and led us in worship. Thank you so much, Tessa, for creating this space for us and for those who listened. What a beautiful time together. You are welcome back anytime. We meet here every Sunday morning at 9 or 10:45. If you feel like this was the beginning of a healing journey for you, know that we would love to walk alongside of you as a church. If you feel that it would be helpful to reach out to a pastor, I would love to speak with you and to get together with you, jordan@adventdenver.com. I would also love to refer you to various trusted counselors that we have in our midst and beyond if you feel like professional counseling would be helpful. And now I want to offer you and ask you to receive this parting blessing. For this reason I kneel before the Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth derives its name. I pray that out of his glorious riches, God may strengthen you with power through his Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. And I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power, together with all the Lord's holy people, to grasp how wide and how long and how high and how deep is the love of Christ, and to know this love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. Not to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us, to him be glory in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever. Amen. You may go in peace.